Ayada Leeds will be moderating, and then would also like to thank Hired for their assistance in setting up for this event today. We do ask that audience members please give the candidates the respect, their full attention, and give them a chance to talk. And we appreciate you all being here today. There's also an opportunity if you'd like to fill out a question. There are questions. There's cards you can fill out located at the same table as the food and the drinks. And if you'd like to fill out, once you've completed it, you can raise your hand and Tatiana with ACER will come by and pick that up. She's in the back. And we do welcome questions from all attendees.
All right, so for the setup of this forum, all candidates will be seated at the council chamber seats facing the audience, and they'll have a chance to respond to all questions. So there's 4 questions that are prepared in advance, and they'll be asked by me and Richard. I'm internet, by the way. And additional questions will be posed by the audience during this time period as people are asking and as they're answering. And again, Tatiana will bring those questions to us. And then the candidates will have a chance to introduce themselves at the beginning of the event and share their reasons for running. The order in which questions are asked to candidates will be varied, and the goal is to have staggering the order of responses. After the question portion of the forum, candidates can join attendees at the attendees table where they can engage in discussions. And this is meant to be conversational, similar to speed dating, in that the candidates can move from one table to another as they talk to the community members. So overall, the goal of the event is to get personalized conversations with the candidates in addition to general questions, and for the community members to hear about what topics are most important to them.
We'd like to thank all the candidates in attendance. Start with Hollis Winston, candidate for Brooklyn Park Mayor. Christian Erickson, candidate for City Council. Ingrid Alexander, candidate for City Council. Tashidi Wacko, candidate for City Council. Maria Tran, candidate for City Council. And Tanya West Hafner, candidate for City Council. We're also expecting shortly Winfred Russell, candidate for mayor. And then we'd like to begin with a round of introductions so the candidates can explain why they're running and who they are. And we can start all the way on the end with you, Ms. West Hafner, and move on down the line.
Hi, I'm Tanya West Hafner, and I'm a 24-year resident of the city of Brooklyn Park. I've been the Planning Commission Chair and the Citizen Long Range Improvement Chair, very involved in our city. My husband and I moved here after we got married 24 years ago. We raised both our kids here. They both graduated from Park Center High School. My son and my husband are both in the Marine Corps. We're both in the Marine Corps. I worked at Hennepin County in their community development and housing work for the last 22 years. I began my volunteer work with the Stable Neighborhoods Task Force, and I served on a bunch of different city focus groups and commissions and things, the multifamily housing study group, anyway, it kind of led me to I like to talk, so I got picked to be the chair quite quickly on that group because I'm kind of nosy and I like to be in charge. So, but I've also been liaison to the Park and Rec Commission when I was on the Planning Commission, the Signature Development Task Force, Neighborhood Stabilization Task Force. But most of all, I've been on the council for the last 4 years, and it's been a very rewarding, fulfilling thing for me to do on top of my other things. And I would really just love to continue the work that I've been doing. I've helped a lot with trying to get some of our programs changed at the city to be more consumer friendly. So I want to continue that work. Obviously, we have a lot of things to do, and I'm going to be talking about some of that, but I just really would like to continue to serve the community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maria Tran. I am a Vietnam War victim and survivor, literally and figuratively. I am also a proud member of a military family for 2 generations. I am also a human rights activist and a motivated writer. I came here like 2003. I went to North Hennepin Community College. I got my 2-year degree. I raised my son as a single mother, and I've been working 18 years like interpreter in healthcare, education, legal, and social service. So I have been helping a lot of people in Vietnamese community with legal scam, medical scam. I love what I've been doing, and with this stepping up to be a city council, I want to help more people, not just the Vietnamese community, but all people in Brooklyn Park City. My priority or my goals if I become a city council, number one is creating more just and public safety. Number two, lifting diversity, bringing people together as a whole. Number three, supporting and working towards racial equity in housing, education, healthcare service, and job opportunities. Number four, high modern technology and economic success can be adequate for a good quality of life if people are dividing and society are unstable. Number five, helping victims of legal scam, medical scam, landlord tenant issue, HOA homeowner insurance scams, and abuse family whose children are dealing with problems in school. So those are my goals, and I hope you, at the Brooklyn Park resident, give me a chance to serve. And I have a passion to serve people. It's in my blood, in my family for many generations. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I am Tashiri Wago. I am a 20-year resident of the city of Brooklyn Park. I live here with my family. And I have, in my day job, I am a chief financial officer for one of the largest nonprofits in the Twin Cities. I worked as a chief financial officer and particularly working in the city of St. Paul and city of Minneapolis, really turning around neighborhoods in terms of development and giving small businesses to succeed, whether that's technical assistance or lending. One of our signature projects is the development of midtown rural markets in South Minneapolis. My educational background is I hold a Master of Accountancy. I'm an accountant and Master of Business Administration, both from one from St. Mary University and another one from Michigan, in the state of Michigan. I have been on the Budget Advisory Commission since 2015. Currently, I'm serving as Vice Chair of Budget Advisory Commission. And serving in the Budget Advisory Commission means you deal with the entire operation of the city. And all the budgets comes in front of you, and our role is advisory to the city council, where we do our best financial sustainability advice or counsel to the city council for considerations. I also volunteer on so many nonprofits in my regular time. I have on the Osceola School District on the Financial Sustainability Plan. I have been president of the Oromo community of Minnesota, the largest community here in the state of Minnesota. And I serve on many other organizations. And why I'm running for office, one, I do see there is a challenge in the city in terms of really status quo to continue or to really embrace the diversity, the growing, flourishing diversity and the potential, the assets diversity brings to us. So I need to be at that level to provide, after serving 5 years in the city council, in the Budget Advisory Commission, it's about time to move into. My priorities are public safety, economic development, quality, safe, and affordable housing, residential property tax reduction, where there is a burden right now on residential property taxpayers, and
If we could start wrapping
quality
it
of
up, thank
services
you.
in the city. Thank you. Where there is a burden right now on residential.
There it goes. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Indrid Alexander, and I am running for Brooklyn Park City Council's East District seat. I'm asking for your vote so that I can bring proactive leadership to our community. Some folks on this panel may want you to believe that everything in Brooklyn Park is okay the way it is, but I believe that we have several issues in our community that need to be addressed. And I feel like I'm the most qualified to help address some of those issues. With my educational background, my experience in business administration, as a small business owner, as a real estate developer and professional, and risk management professional, I feel that I can bring proactive leadership and different ways to address some of the issues that our community is facing. I've been a resident of Brooklyn Park for 27 years, and I feel that now it's time that we have a group of individuals of leadership that is embracing the diversity of our community. I believe that up until lately, that many people believe that there is a lot of division in our community, and we need someone that is going to bring unity and embrace the diversity of our community. So I ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
I'm Chris Erickson. I am running also in the East District for the City Council seat. I'm a lifelong resident of Brooklyn Park. My parents still live here in the home where I grew up, and I'm raising my own children here. They attend Brooklyn Middle School and Park Center High School. I'm proud to call Brooklyn Park home. Professionally, I work for the University of Minnesota Medical School, administering several educational programs, and my previous 2 professional roles were also in higher education. Over the past several years, I've been increasingly engaged in our community. I've served as a Human Rights Commissioner for 6 years, including 2.5 years as the chair. I've been on several committees and task forces with our police and fire department. Have been on interview committees for several key leaders, professional leaders in our city. I've done some ride-alongs and trainings with our police and fire departments to better understand the work that they do. And most recently, I've been working together with tenant leaders at Huntington Place to advocate for better living conditions there. In all of this work, I've seen a lot of strengths of our community, and I've seen a lot of needs. And my desire to serve on the City Council is based on wanting to amplify those strengths and address those needs. And that's why I'm asking for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hollis Winston. I'm running for mayor of Brooklyn Park. I want to thank ACER for hosting this. I also want to thank the audience for attending, and I want to thank my family who's been supportive from the very beginning. So my wonderful wife, Teresa Winston, 19 years. I have an 18-year-old daughter who is attending college on scholarship, and I have a 17-year-old son who is instrumental to my campaign. and a 6-year-old daughter who's right there in the audience trying to be quiet. So thank you for your support. As far as my background, I have an MBA from Carlson School of Management, where I served as class president. I've served Fortune 500s in various operational roles as well. Served 2 terms on the Brooklyn Park Budget Advisory Commission, also on the Council of African Heritage. But here's the reality. I'm running because many of the opportunities I grew up with as a child, so safe streets and great educational and work opportunities, seem as if they are disappearing within our city due simply to council mismanagement, lack of oversight, and lack of vision. So we dropped the ball on addressing crime, supporting our youth, and ensuring that the city is not a financial burden to our residents in the form of rising property taxes. In fact, this year, the council is proposing a 12.4% tax levy. Everyday families are struggling to move up and get ahead in life, which is really the story of my family and many other families. And I want to ensure we preserve the American dream right here in Brooklyn Park.
Thank you. My name is Winfred Russell, council member Winfred Russell. As a council member for the last 4 years, a community advocate for more than 15 years, and resident for 20 years, I consider myself very fortunate to live and work in a city I love. I have worked to increase support for our police and fire services, affordable housing stock, small and micro businesses, and improve roads, parks, trails, and sidewalks here in the city. I have supported the purchase of a small business and coordinated COVID-19 community response work throughout the state of Minnesota. It has been my experience that government works best when everyone in the city is involved and can participate. I passionately believe that we can accomplish great things by working together and with an open and honest exchange of ideas. And that's what I've done over the last 15 more years here. So I ask you for your vote come November the 8th. Under my mayorship, Brooklyn Park will become second to none to our peers and can look to us for innovation and inspiration. So rather than working towards benchmarks, Brooklyn Park will become the benchmark. So I ask you to please vote Russell for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates for that round of introductions. Next, we'll be moving into questions. And for each of these questions, candidates will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. Please look to Lana in the front row in the gray ACER shirt. And she'll let you know when you have 1 minute, 30 seconds, and when it's time to stop. The first question, the order will be Alice Winston, Winfred Russell, Maria Tran, Indrid Alexander, Christian Erickson, Tashidi Wacko, and then Tanya West Hafner. And don't worry, I'll remind you of the order as we go. So that first question, starting with Mr. Winston. Transportation access remains a pressing issue for Brooklyn Park residents and also serves to encourage individuals to join the Brooklyn Park community. What plans for transportation do you have?
Well, I think it goes back again to those property taxes. So, our budget currently lies disproportionately on homeowners. So we need a transportation system that helps us acquire the economic growth that we need. And so the BLRT, or the light rail, will be coming. And I think, we need to ensure three things. One, safety at every stop along the line by ensuring law enforcement's voice is part of the design process. Access to the line from east to west so people can get back and forth to it, and opportunities for local businesses to grow along that line. So there hasn't been a ton of planning around that, but that has to be something that occurs so that everybody can participate in the prosperity that's coming. But we also have to address the safety along 252, so that's not often mentioned enough. But we need to do that while protecting businesses and homeowners along that corridor. So that'll mean working with, our Brooklyn Center to make sure that happens as well. So we have to welcome it because we need more revenue to kind of afford the city that we deserve.
Thank you. Same question to Mr. Russell.
Thank you. One of the things I think we have to look out for and listen out for is that you hear a lot of promises. You hear a lot of folks promising this stuff and give you the impression that the current council or the current city is not doing anything or hasn't done anything. That is not true. We're doing a lot and we'll continue to do a lot when I become your mayor. One of the things that we're working on, we invested heavily in our transportation system. I have been a big supporter of our of improving our sidewalks, our bike trails, our bike lanes in the city. So when I become mayor, one of the things I'll continue to do is to improve upon our transportation infrastructure. What I would like us to do is to look at alternative forms of transportation. So bikes and electric vehicles, we need to put EV charging stations all around Brooklyn Park. I've been a big supporter of that, a big supporter of alternative forms of transportation. 252, we currently are working to create 252 into a 6-lane highway with the state of Minnesota. So these are things that we are currently doing, that we are currently investing in. We invest in heavily in transportation and we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
All right, and then next, Mrs. Tran, same question.
My plan for transportation access are the bus line and the metro mobility service. We have not completely out of the COVID pandemic yet, and we do need time to recovery patiently. Anything fancy and costly or attractively planned should be waiting for more study or research and times. Our available funds right now should be reserved for things like unavoidable and emergency expense.
Thank you for your response. Next is Indra Alexander, same question.
Okay, there it goes. In regard to transportation, I do believe the light rail is something that is needed in our community. As Hollis had mentioned, focusing on transportation going from the east to west is also should be a priority. But one of the things that I do want to address, and that was mentioned by Winfred Russell, is this attention to addressing the concerns of Highway 252 and its safety. Highway 252 has some of the most unsafe intersections in our community, and it needs to be addressed. But it does not need to be addressed by adding a 6-lane highway with a min-pass lane that will bring additional pollution, air pollution, noise pollution, displacing over 100 residents and businesses. This is not necessarily a solution for our community. This might be a solution for people who live outside of our community. But I would like for City Council and the rest of the leadership in this community to make sure that we are allowing residents to address this issue before you start to push through a major highway through our community that would destroy the biking trails along West River Road, and also will drive more traffic into our neighborhoods and make it even more unsafe.
Thank you for your response. And then next is Christian Erickson.
First of all, the blue line, it's coming, we hope, and I will definitely keep advocating for that, and including some of the station ideas that Hollis has just mentioned. 252, which is something I've spent a lot of time crossing back and forth over during this campaign. Definitely a lot of unsafe intersections. And I also hear concerns from the residents about some of the things that Indra just mentioned about a 6-lane freeway. So I'd be curious to explore some alternate options like a below grade parkway, sort of like 35E in St. Paul, or where we have limited access, but sort of a different traffic pattern and speed. I think exploring some alternate plans like that is worth consideration. Lastly, I definitely agree with the east-west or connecting our high-density residential areas like the Zane Avenue corridor to commercial properties like the Target and Cub and Walmart, so that residents, especially seniors who live on those properties, have easier access to the services they need. So those are a few of the things I'm concerned and thinking about.
When it comes to transportation, one of the things that we should do is really provide the needed leadership to complete the Blue Line, and the impact that economic impact that it will bring to the city of Brooklyn Park is great. It will attract more people. People have more options to work wherever, all over the city. So that's one. And the other is the 252. We need to be environmental stewardship. We need to show that. We need to really be concerned about environment, the congestion it adds, and find out an alternate transportation avenue. We are moving toward the EV market, electronic vehicles market. That could play a role. And also we need to really work with the Met Council to provide the frequency and the stops of bus services. That way we can create more accessibility and also more frequency of our people to get from A to B or C. And if we do that, we can connect the city west to east or north to south.
Thank you, and then Mrs. West Hafner.
Thank you. You guys have already heard it, some of it. I think the two key projects that, if they got done, would change our world here in Brooklyn Park, because they bring safety and connection and more reliable access. I think that's the thing I focus on with the Blue Line. I've been a volunteer way before the previous preferred alternative was picked. I've been involved in that a lot. There are stationary studies that have been done, and I advocated on the city council level here to get our the TOD overlays put in place along the line so that we could bring potentially, as that comes, more density, more things there to bring that economic vitality to our city. The other thing is 252, which is currently, if you're not already aware, right now open for public comment for the environmental review process that they opened up again. I just drove on it yesterday. It's already 6 lanes until you get to Brooklyn Park in one area. So some of that is sort of taken up. There are simple things that they're going to be doing very quickly to try to help with some of the safety things, but that thing has already got funding. So why is it not going? Why are we not doing something? My suggestion to people is to look at that environmental review and make comments so that it can get through that environmental review process, so we can get to the best alternative that everybody agrees on, so that we can get it going, because there's funding already sitting there. So thank you.
All right, thank you for those answers. Our next question is going to be, concern about rising crime and how youth spend their time have made security and youth involvement intertwining issues. How would you utilize your position in order to address these issues? And for the order of this, we're going to start with Mr. Wacko, then Mrs. West Hafner, then Mr. Erickson, Ms. Alexander, Mrs. Tran, and then Mr. Winston. And again, we'll remind you as we go.
Thank you so much. This is really very good question, as public safety is my number one priority. And one of the things that I strongly object in this question is stigmatizing youth as a source of crime. Crime is collective. Crime doesn't have color for me. And it happens. So to assume that this is a youth-driven crime happening in the city is totally, that's totally, I don't like that. I don't agree with that. The crime that's happening in the city, public safety, it requires community response, collective response. It's about all of us. All of us need a voice. And my role here is to really closely work, like I'm playing that role right now as Vice Chair of Budget Advisory Commission, to really work with police, park and rec, fire departments, the nonprofits, school districts, and community leaders to come up with the best community first driven approach to crime prevention, violence prevention, and control. And if we do that, we can come up with collective community driven solutions.
Ms. West Hafner?
Thank you. I don't disagree that potentially this question stigmatizes youth as criminals. One of the things that my son and I worked on when he was still in high school, which is now turned into Brooklink, which is this youth-centered, youth-driven, let's ask the kids what they want sort of process. I have been working on that since day one. We have the outreach workers. Our police department uses the same three-pronged approach to the youth in our community, but they do need things to do in their time away from school so that they're not thinking about stuff that they shouldn't be thinking or doing things they shouldn't be doing. So investing in our youth programs, which we've done, and investing in the outreach workers, which we've done, and we will continue to, and we're going to increase, this budget includes an increase in their time. But the kids are a key piece of that puzzle for crime prevention in our city. So we do have to continue to invest in them. So I will just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. And then Mr. Erickson, please.
I'm committing to supporting programs like the Youth Intervention Team that Tanya just mentioned, which has proven to be really effective at engaging youth and preventing undesirable police interactions with young people, as well as providing support and resources to youth who need them. Also, along the lines of youth needing safe places to engage in healthy and enriching activities, this needs to be expanded, particularly through the construction of the second youth center that was funded by the Park Bond referendum, engagement with our school districts and the athletic association and community organizations to make sure that our youth have places to be where they feel safe and encouraged and empowered to grow. And lastly, our youth need safe places to live. Many young people live in some apartment communities which are failing to provide the most basic standards of a safe and healthy sense of place that's vital to their development and their success. So that is the third prong that I would strongly encourage and work towards.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Alexander.
Thank you. As far as crime and youth, I would have to agree with Tashidi that tying the two together is not necessarily the best solution. But in regard to our youth, I do believe that we need to provide more services. We have parks throughout our community, and many of them do not have community centers for them to actually have engaging activities on an ongoing basis. I grew up in the Rondo community, and I know kind of the hallmark of my youth was being able to attend parks such as Dunning Park in Oxford, where I had activities that kept me out of trouble. In the East District, we just do not have enough community centers to engage our youth. And I think that's something that we need to be investing in.
Thank you. Mrs. Tran?
Concerns about rising crime and youth, how youth spend their time. I think language and cultures are very important to youth development, especially children from bilingual or multilingual families. Unfortunately, racial discrimination in America make disconnected communities and neighborhoods. Children from those communities grow up lacking the connection to the world they are living, the foundation, the social bonds, and are vulnerable to drug and crimes. I will make sure if I am in office, the funding to family and youth program, promote cultural events and partner day communities activities, reading club for children, homework help for kids after school, neighbor greeting days. I think those can help bring people in the community together, and it will benefit the youth as well.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Russell.
Thank you. We currently have a number of programs already targeting youth and youth engagement. Under my mayorship, we will increase our program offering to engage young people. The current council, the current city council, we've spent $1.8 million, invested $1.8 million in violence interruption, including mental health services. Work very closely with many community-based organizations and faith-based organizations in our community. So it's going to be a partnership between the police and community and the council and all of us working together to solve crime issues in the community and keep our young people engaged and active. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm a big supporter and had heavily supported the funding of parks in our community. We just redeveloped 3 parks, Lakeland, Norwood, and Harkoff, adding more playgrounds and more courts there to get young people engaged. Those are programs that will continue under my mayorship and increase funding in those areas, but not only south of 85th, but also north of 85th, engaging the youth in the northern part of the city as well. Thank you.
All right, and then Mr. Winston.
Yeah, I think before I go any further, I would say that 1.8 million that was spent with mixed results. And I think some of that money, some of the program was actually pulled from Huntington Place because they found a much more effective model. So you have to be careful in terms of where you invest the money because you want a great impact. But I would also say the question really probably wants to ask, what's the best way to address rising crime? And I would say, fully funding the police, and there'll be those who argue and say we already are. I would say we're not. And that includes some of the wraparound services like mental health that we need to ensure so that we can push that down. But you also do have to invest in youth programs. And I know my opponent is more concerned about north, but below we're dealing with some issues and youth do need to be better engaged there. So we do need to have more funding in some of those areas because there's just not enough for youth to do there. But it's also a bigger issue than just that because you also need to have some support for families. So, there's organizations like Amway out there who are dealing with domestic abuse, victims and counseling them. And there's a significant number of calls that center around that the police are dealing with. The village is pushing down crime in Huntington Place by better connecting the police to the community. So I think we have to be very careful in terms of how we invest this money, and we have to make sure we're looking at outcomes and metrics, not just a statement or a slogan. We need to make sure that it's being spent carefully and wisely so that we can finally push down crime. We should lead in pushing it down, not turn off Fox 9 and see a bunch of incidents like we did this morning.
Thank you all the candidates for their responses. I did want to take a second to acknowledge multiple candidates pointed out the problematic wording there. And I wrote that question and wanted to establish neither I nor ACER ever want to blame youth for crime or imply that they're a cause. The goal of the question was to talk about youth programs and measures by which we can keep youth safe and involved. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. Apologies for any problematic wording and thank you for those robust answers. Next question, the order will be Winfred Russell, Hollis Winston, Indrid Alexander, Tashidi Wacko, Tanya West Hafner, Maria Tran, and Christian Erickson. And I'll let you all know as the order progresses as well. And this question is, what is your plan for promoting economic development in Brooklyn Park, both among current residents and prospective residents who may one day move to Brooklyn Park? And again, we'll start off with Winfred Russell.
So my plan would be what we are currently doing and enhancing on the work that we are currently doing, trying to encourage economic growth and development in the city by investing heavily in small business and micro business enterprises here in the city. The council recently purchased a strip mall, West Broadway and Brooklyn Boulevard, where it used to be CVS. And we've turned that into a business incubation center that will be open sometime next year. We invested heavily in small businesses here all along the Brooklyn Boulevard corridor. We'll continue to do that, work very closely with our city, with our small businesses. The current council, we just invested over $1 million into supporting small businesses and organizations in our city. Almost 40 organizations receive funding from us, from the Economic Development Authority here at the city. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to embrace our small businesses and continue to spur economic growth throughout the city. You see, we have active construction going on in Brooklyn Park, and that will continue because we are going out there recruiting businesses that are coming here and paying taxes, and we'll continue to do that.
So what I'll say is for the past 3-4 terms, what we've been doing has led to the 12.4% levy that's being proposed. The reality is we've got some structural issues that are going to affect how much we can afford public safety, and we've got to get ahead of it. So part of that is you got to capitalize on our location. We're 15 to 20 minutes away from Minneapolis, right? So you have to bring the right type of market rate apartments for housing, and that will also bring the right type of restaurants, the right type of shopping, the right type of office parks. We cannot continue to bring businesses here that do not pay their fair share of taxes because they're getting TIF financing. So that's one. Two, we need to work with our various partners. So at the state level, people are saying, hey, we can provide some money for you to establish a cultural corridor. What does that look like? We've got to have partners that we can work with. But then there's also folks like the Meters of the world, the Neons of the world, NDCs of the world that want to get in here, want to provide technical assistance, want to provide lending capital, like with the folks that I work with now, to say, how can we help your businesses grow? I would also say that when we establish a small business center, we have to make sure that everyone that wants to be involved with that has an opportunity to hear about it, because we cannot continue to finance the same group of people over and over and get the same results. So we have to bring in more people in, because if we disperse those opportunities, we will get more growth throughout the city, and you will have more economic opportunities for folks that live here.
Thank you. And same question next for Mrs. Alexander.
Yeah, so in regard to economic development in Brooklyn Park, currently I serve on the Small Business Center Task Force. And that is a major priority for me, is to build and strengthen the small business owners and the working class in our community. The thing about the Small Business Center is the focus is to really bring high-level resources to small business owners and micro business owners. And we need to continue to support those efforts. In addition to that, we really need to focus on having a more balanced economic development plan. As Hollis had mentioned, the focus has been more on these larger organizations, these warehouse type of businesses that don't necessarily employ our residents. And so we need to make sure that we are receiving taxes from businesses that we attract to our community, and also that they're employing our residents.
Thank you. And then next up, we have Mr. Wacko.
Thank you. When it comes to economic development, currently, one of the biggest tasks I'm working on is economic development. And the first thing I'll do is revisit the economic development policy that we have in the city. And right now, if you see the economic development attraction policies that the city is using, is not really favoring small businesses. And we need to create how to attract minority businesses to the city and how to support them. And when it comes to housing, that's one of the area also to revisit. And if you see in the city of Brooklyn Park, in the West Metro, the maximum levy, the city that has the maximum property tax levy is the city of Brooklyn Park. And I think we need to address that, and particularly the economic development that's not addressing to attract balanced economic development to the city. And one thing is to do all this to attract economic development and housing policy, we need to address perception in the city. There are some leaders coming up, crime is gonna go through the roof, crime is, compared to other cities, and the perception, the image of the city is more harmed by such kind of words, which is lack of leadership, in my view. And we need to rather work collectively to address those crimes rather than really impacting the image of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wacko. And next, same question to Mrs. West Hafner.
Thank you. Economic development is a bigger picture when you look at the whole of the city. It is what other people have said. It's the jobs, it's the businesses, it's the housing. I think some of the things that we've been supporting on the council now, the buying the small business, the strip malls, so we could create the small business center, that came directly out of hearing from our small businesses that are in our city, asking us to help them create a space that has affordable rents for them, and then different options. So we pivoted a little bit into that to create some different types of opportunities there. I think it's really important to understand that we kind of need both, in my opinion. We need the big guys to bring the big warehouse jobs that pay $40 an hour, and then we need to push them, which we've been doing, to offer those jobs to the people that live here. And then we're also getting businesses relocating here, and so then they're bringing the people with them too, so they become Brooklyn Park residents on top of that. So we need all of the different types and angles and avenues to bring people here and to grow our economy. And I couldn't agree more that we also need to continue to work on the perception of what Brooklyn Park is and isn't. Because it's very frustrating to me, living here for as long as I have, for people to continue to say things that they say about Brooklyn Park. I think that's where all of us could be leaders together, I'm looking at all of you, together to help work on that part so that we can have a very prosperous city. Thank you.
Thank you. And then next, same question to Mrs. Tran.
My plan for promoting economic development in Brooklyn Park among current residents and prospective residents is mutual local business support. Take me my experience. I live in Brooklyn Park. I've been using the service like from the healthcare system, like in St. Paul or somewhere like Burnsville for a long time, but I didn't know that right in my city we have the same service. Why can we just support our local business? And so that way we could save gas and time for driving and a lot of complicated problem. If like mistake order very quick, like they fix right away, and the way they service much better than the big company from far away. So I think with the way we support our local small business, then we can attract more people to come to our city to do business, and so there's benefit. The housing, the taxation system.
Thank you for that response. And then same question to Mr. Erickson.
First, I'm very optimistic about the new small business incubator and its potential to spur entrepreneurship. I hope to see this used to engage youth and adults, schools, and community organizations to bring the broadest number of Brooklyn Park residents into that work. Second, we have a limited amount of developable and redevelopable land remaining. Our council, together with our economic development professionals, needs to get creative with how we seek out development partners for these spaces that will hopefully have commercial and retail results that breathe new life into our community. We have a really diverse and creative population and outside organizations willing to partner, like Hollis just mentioned, that I think can really help the city to realize some development that's unique to our community. And third, I'm committed to the continued success of programs like Brooklink and the Brooklyn Bridge Alliance through jobs programs and new efforts to engage youth on city commissions. Getting our young people involved and invested in our city early is key to future prosperity of our community.
All right, thank you for those answers. We're on to our last prepared question. So just a quick reminder before we start the audience questions, if you have any questions for any of the candidates up here, just raise your hand, write it down on a piece of paper that you can get back over there, and our ACER team will collect it. All right, so the next question is, what is one major change you would like to see accomplished during your term in office? And we're going to start with Mrs. Alexander, then Mrs. West Hafner, then Mr. Oracco, then Mrs. Tran, Mr. Erickson, Mr. Russell, and Mr. Winston. So take it away, Ms. Alexander.
Just one, huh? Okay. I would have to say, really addressing our public safety. Highway 252 is a major concern for me. And I'd like to make sure that we are addressing this issue that is not only safe for our community, but also addresses the concerns of our residents as far as making sure that we are addressing it so that we are taking in the concerns of our residents and addressing the safety at the same time.
All right, Mr. or Mrs. West Hafner.
Thank you. I think it's really hard to pick one thing. When there's a lot of things to be thinking about. This is a big city. We have a lot of things we're working on. One of the things that I'm going to continue to push is working on kind of how our code enforcement works. and how they are that they become even more proactive than they have been, not only on the single family side, but on our multifamily side. You guys have probably all heard it. We definitely have issues with one particular apartment complex, but I'm in housing. I know that we have problems in other ones too, and we need to be more proactive about it. And so one of the things that we changed a little bit already is how we're budgeting some of that, and we're adding some staff to that to hopefully be more proactive. But I don't like the whole, like, you got to tattle on your neighbor when they leave their garbage can out and some of those things, which I don't think build community. And then we have a big gap in our community of people that are not being served by not having us be proactive and getting into those complexes and seeing what's going on and making sure that we're trying to be ahead of it as much as possible. I'm not saying we have a ton of control over it because they're all privately owned, but at the same time, at least if we know, we can push what levers we can from the city and to get people on top of things and not letting stuff go so long that it's in complete disarray and can't fix it. So, thank you.
All right, Mr. Wacko's next.
Thank you. I'm, there's only one, but I'm the only candidate from Brooklyn Park Central District. So it's hard for me to pick one. What I would like to see if I get elected, I hope you all vote to Shiriwaka for Brooklyn Park City Council Central District. And what I would like to see is, one, the city of Brooklyn Park image really improved as a livable, attractive, with its beauties, with its park and rec, with its amenities it has, and where everybody is envy to buy a home here, to bring their family here. That's what I would like to see. I would like crime rates to be decreased and controlled. I would like to see water quality improved, which has decreased from 80% quality to 64% last 2.5 years. I would like to see that improved. I would like Blue Line to be constructed, and I would like really the current city, what current city council did, which is the continue use engagement in city government to continue, which is really one thing that I like to see use being in the commission and see themselves in the future government and what it means, and that's really a plus, and I would like to see that continue.
All right, Mrs. Tran, please.
One major change I would like to see accomplished during my term in office. I have to say that I hate to see the poor getting poorer for being victim of scams. So I want to see no more victim losing money deposit to landlord scam or homeowner insurance scam from the HOA to the homeowner, townhouse homeowner. We don't need to be a lawyer to know how to deal with those scams. I live with it. I win this, so I can, help others.
Thank you. And then Mr. Erickson, please.
My intention is to work from day one towards every renter in Brooklyn Park living in a home that looks like those images that property managers like to post on their websites. I think this impacts everything from economic development to crime and safety to education to prosperity to the perceptions people have about Brooklyn Park. Every rental property in the city, from single family to the largest complexes, has to be safe, clean, healthy, and attractive. And when they're not, we need to hold landlords accountable. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Russell.
Thank you. A lot of things that I think we are doing great, and one of the things that we do in the city is what we call continuous improvement. So we continuously improving on all of the processes and all of the programs that we have in place. But one thing I'd like to focus on, and I've talked to a number of residents to knock in, and they brought this to my attention, is the water quality. So I will, first day would set up a water task force to look at the water quality issue It's one of the big, problems here in Brooklyn Park that a lot of people talked about, but it's going to cost about $14 million to solve. So I would like to hear from the residents, to hear what they have to say, because in as much as they tell me all the time, and they tell all of us all the time on the council about how bad water quality is, when we tell them what it's going to take to fix it, the conversation stops. But I think that this is something that needs to be taken care of. And one way is to set up a task force and let's look at it, let's engage the residents and see if we're willing to spend that money. And I'd imagine this was like a couple of years ago, it was $14 million. So imagine now it's even more with the inflation and everything else. So that would be one of the things that I would do on day one. It's going to focus on that. I'm not already working on. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say quickly, it's actually $20 to $25 million to address that. And the conversation can actually continue. Had a brief conversation with Chairman Noor, Chair in the House Jobs and Economic Development Committee. And basically, we were talking about this water quality. He said there's actually dollars at the state, there's grant dollars as well that would fix that. City Council just needs to reach out and figure out how to do that. The other thing is, for me, I would like to see the crime rate fall below the national average for a city of our size and also of our demographics. Simply saying crime is going up everywhere is a bit disingenuous, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when, like I said, I turned on the TV, there was a stabbing incident, there was a shooting incident, and you see that too often. I think we need to say, why can't our city ever get ahead of the curve instead of following the lead of everyone else or following if the economy is going up or the economy is going down? It affects what businesses we can attract and where. It affects the value of folks' homes. It affects whether we feel safe shopping in our own city or where we're going to shop. And it affects whether we allow our children to play in the parks. It also affects that perception of the city. So I think we've talked about the solutions. I think we have a good understanding of solutions. For me, it's getting ahead of that perception, but you can get ahead of the perception if you actually address the reality. So that would be my first priority.
All right, thank you for your responses. We will now move on to our public questions.
And then the first public question is, what are 2 proposals or strategies you would support to increase voter engagement and participation? And the order will go Mr. Winston, Mr. Russell, Mrs. Tran, Mrs. Alexander, Mr. Erickson, Mr. Wacko, and then Mrs. West Hafner. And starting with you, Mr. Winston.
So you say the question once again?
Of course. What are 2 proposals or strategies that you would support to increase voter engagement and participation?
So I'll make it, try to make this one brief. I would say, one, we talked about the apartments and the quality of living conditions there. I think improving those, getting the right programming in there that talks to people about their right to vote, how that works. I think that's pretty low hanging fruit, especially when we look at apartments and we look at the low rate of voting within apartments. 2 voting locations. So when you look at a lot of the apartments, where they put the voting locations are a little bit further away than in other neighborhoods, right? I don't know if that's by design or by accident, but if you fix that and you put voting locations within walking distance, voting is going to go up. Voting engagement is going to go up. So I guess we can probably stop it there, but for me, those 2 are the kind of the low-hanging fruit in terms of engaging people and getting them more involved. I also think in terms of leadership, the third one, in terms of leadership, less partisan politics, more unity, and getting people results. Because if people see their living conditions change, people are going to start believing in the system again. But because people have been failed over and over, they're just not involved. So we need to change that as well.
Thank you. To you, Mr. Russell.
Thank you. There's huge voter apathy, we know, in this, in our community. And one of the things that I will do and will continue to do is engage in our youth, getting the youth engage 18 plus in civic engagement and civic responsibility. I mean, one of the things that we've done here on the council is to encourage young people to serve on our commissions and our boards, and so we are in the city. So all of that is going to encourage them to be civically involved and civically engaged, and work with community-based organizations, work with neighborhood-based organizations, get them engaged in the governance process. I mean, as big as the city is, and as much money that we spend on getting information out, you'll be surprised that very few people even know that there is a midterm election coming up November 8th. So we have to do a lot of work around that. There's no doubt, but we have to work and engage community organizations, our BIPOC community groups, and tell them and educate them about the importance of voting and participating in elections, because our quality of life and everything we do in the city more or less depends on that. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. And then same question to Mrs. Tran.
To get the public engaged to voting right, I just do very simple thing. Like I tell people about the benefits, and I boost them up. Like a lot of people that they elderly or seniors, they don't know the importance of voting, and so I just educate them about the voting rights, that how it's important, in the history, in America history, and how people come to today that everyone can vote. One more thing, I boost them up. I boost them up, like when you go to vote, if you have people will look you different. You are a good citizen. You do the thing. And I got many people who never voted before. This time, just because I don't tell them because they have to vote for me, because they even live in different areas, not just my district, but they get out to vote the first time. So I'm very happy.
Thank you for your response. And then same question to Mrs. Alexander.
Okay, so I would say that getting our residents to be more engaged and participating is really helping them understand that that the leadership is proactive, and that the leadership is proactive in advocating for them. And so we need to be reaching out to our community outside of the times that we're asking for their vote, but helping them understand that we're listening throughout the year, and that and so that the voice that they're able to express throughout the year, they know that it will be in place when it comes time to vote. So I think having that participation with our engagement with our residents outside of the election period is going to be really important.
Thank you. And then to Mr. Erickson next.
It's interesting talking to folks at the doors. You get some unexpected questions like, oh, so do you live in Brooklyn Park then? Or to really practical questions like folks who don't know that they can vote again once they're finished with a felony obligations to the court. So really basic education to our residents around how local government works, how government works overall, who can vote, when can they vote, where do they vote, and carrying that on all year long, whether there's a major election or not, is really important. And doing that work, not just here at City Hall or at the Community Activity Center, but in apartment community rooms, in schools, in churches, in mosques, in engaging our residents all year long, whether there's an election or not, and helping them understand how our democracy works is the only way that I see that it can happen.
Thank you. And then next up, same question to Mr. Wacko.
Thank you so much. I think the first thing we should do is really how to address voter engagement barriers and also how to enhance possibilities. And if we look into the barriers, we are in that age where there are intimidations, voter intimidations, and attack from from all directions on democracy. This democracy we exercise in the United States of America is the envy of the world, but there are some who don't believe it. And how to make it transparent, how to make it more inclusive. The government, called the government of the people, by the people, for the people. And what happens, what decision comes from government leaders, impact all of us. And one thing we have to do for new immigrants is to really educate about civic engagement, to create an avenue. Can we create like ambassadors who reach out to, without any partisan side, to educate them their rights, their processes. When I go through the city, I see people, early voting. Oh, I can vote early. There are all kinds of questions that people ask, and because there is a disconnect between what kind of voting rights they have and what they can exercise, whether they can be able even to do it or not. So we need to have that. And the other is to be true about election, really. Election is about the people, about the future, about the country, about all of us. And to be true to that and not to really, democracy, not to attack democracy, rather make democracy flourish for all of us.
Thank you. And then last, same question to Mrs. West Hafner.
Thank you. I think it starts off with taking every possible opportunity that you have to talk to people about when and where and how you can vote and how easy it is to get registered online. Just every opportunity you possibly can to engage with people and talk to them, especially younger people and my neighbors who weren't from this country, to just kind of talk to them when you're out. And good point about all the time, whenever, not just election time. I think the other strategy that I like is trying to engage with the community leaders and get the word out to them, because if they know they can talk to me, then I can go talk to their congregations or their committees or their groups. Just that any chance you can possibly get to engage with people and explain it to people, I think is one of the biggest strategies for me.
All right, thank you for those responses. Our next question, we actually got a couple of questions about this related to this, so this one's pretty important. So the question is, how have you supported residents at Huntington Place or anyone else who is advocating for safer conditions? We're going to start with Mr. Erickson, go to Mrs. Tran, then Mrs. West Hafner, Mr. Wacko, Mrs. Alexander, and then Mr. Winston, and then ending with Mr. Russell.
Up until early this summer, I was aware that there were issues at Huntington, but didn't really understand the depth of it until one simple question. Do you know how to get some food delivered when the gas is out in this building? And I made one phone call, and that phone call turned into others, and before long there were meals for hundreds of people set up there. And I think that's how we engage everyone in this work. When you see a need or when you're aware of a need, just start networking, connecting people. And that's what I've tried to do with Huntington Place, Village VP since then. And I know other people have come along the way, and people were doing some of that work long before I got involved. But it's really a simple issue to get around once it's presented to you and you see the depth of the problem. So I would encourage those who are not yet aware to ask questions and get engaged themselves. And if it's not Huntington Place, in some issue in Brooklyn Park, because there's plenty.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Tran?
I think the Huntington resident tenants, many of them, they don't know about the available source like tenant and landlord advocate or health, and we could help them to those sort of online, on phone, and even help them in writing, because even if they reach those sort of help, they even maybe they are required to write a report about what's going on, and so some maybe even not to be able to write a paragraph like that. So we could help.
All right, thank you for your response. Mrs. West Hafner, please.
Thank you. Like Christian, I think we're all aware, I've been to many meetings prior to the things that started happening this summer around Huntington, even when the previous owner owned it. I think it's just one of those things that it's sort of hard to get your arms around because it's so huge. The building, the property, the cost, everything. So you got to kind of do those small things like responding to people when they give you a call and say, we don't have gas, nobody can cook, can you come help? So I went out that day and then started really understanding, unfortunately, how bad it really is there. And I mean, I've said it many times, I do housing for a living. I really strongly believe in safety and sanitary housing. And I will continue to believe that. I try to hold the current owner responsible. I ask him at every single council member, give us a plan, show us a plan, show the community a plan, show the council a plan, show somebody a plan. So there's not this desperation that people just don't have any idea which way things are going to go. And I will continue to do that. There's always more that all of us can be doing when you get the call and the water's gone out again, or the heat's gone out again, or something's gone out again, and you see something posted on Facebook. Follow them on Facebook, and I think you're on Twitter as well, that when they call you go help. There was a young couple that lived there, and I met them at the barbecue thing to try to help get food when there wasn't gas, and someone had stolen the filters, the air filter purifier systems that someone bought for them. They stole them right out from underneath all of us. And I said, well, I have the ability to help you get different ones. And so I took the two of them to the store and got them different ones. That you just do those little things, any little thing you possibly can do. So thanks.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Waco?
Thank you so much. One of my priority, if I get elected to the city council, is really to address the housing issues, including Huntington. When it comes to Huntington, there is all the conversations, all the continuous talk, but not addressing the, tenant-driven solutions. The voices of everybody matters. The voice of tenants matters because they are the ones who live in there. And Minnesota is the greatest city that state we live in, the greatest city we live in, Brooklyn Park here. And we have resources and we have the authority. The city council has authority and the resources. And what's lacking is An owner who really never improved the space, you just slap with $10,000 fine. If I am homeowner, a rental homeowner in the city of Brooklyn Park, I know I used to have one, but no more. But the penalty is high. Why accountability is lacking there? Why not? Why all the conversation? One of the solution is defining the problem. If you define the problem, halfway the problem is solved. And we always talk about that, but no incremental improvement. And I will fight for that and keep accountable. We have the resources and also authority to impose that to happen and or take action.
Thank you for that response. Mrs. Alexander?
Thank you for the question. I think up until recently, I really wasn't aware of what was happening in Huntington Place. And I believe once we started getting more information, I took it upon myself to really try to understand the problem. And not just jump in and offer Band-Aids, but to really look at what is really the cause of the problem, not just for the residents, but what are we doing as a community to support our residents, to to support the owners and to understand what help they need. Because if the building is in disrepair and the owners are not able to address it, then the residents are the ones to suffer. So I feel like we have to spend more time digging into the real problem versus just trying to jump in and offer, small solutions. So recently I reached out to Aon myself and asked, what help do you need? How can we help you? And so we have meetings scheduled and to look at it a little bit closer.
Thank you for that response. Next, Mr. Winston.
Yes, so I wrote and rewrote 3 different answers, which probably tells you how involved I've been. In 2018, 2019, we started having code drives after we kind of figured out the conditions people were living with. That kind of escalated to, in 2021, we had a giant Toys for Tots. We raised about $8,000 toys, coats for folks. And from there, we kind of started having more events with Huntington Place and figuring out the different issues that people had. So there's an organization there called The Village, which we're proud of their endorsement. And we actually helped with them getting some of their initial structure and finding out about the asbestos and the pests and all the different issues in the building. The reality is it's less about what we've done in the street, and the street cred and all that. And the reality that along that Zane corridor, which nobody wants to talk about, there's a ton of apartments that are dealing with the same infrastructure issues. And to fix them, you're talking 60 to 100 million, 150 or 200 million. It's a ridiculous number that has to be addressed. And so we can't do it as a city alone. The residents have to understand how big the issue is. We have to hold bad actors accountable, but also realize that they're going to be the partners that help fix this. And then we need to lean into our partnerships at the state level. Because if we don't do that, the problem is only going to continue to fester. And then people are going to come and take credit for little Band-Aid solutions, when in reality, this is a much bigger issue that's affecting thousands of people and the city as a whole.
I think among all of the folks up here, I stand to be corrected, but I think I'm the only one who lived at Huntington. So I got into activism and advocacy, and which ultimately led to me founding an organization called ACER to address some of the issues at Huntington and other parts of the city. So I've been involved there at Huntington, trying to address issues at Huntington since the early 2000s. And I've been laser focused on working with the residents to find a solution. I bring partners in from the University of Minnesota, where I worked at Hennepin County Health Department, having workshops there for the residents on healthy eating, healthy living, And since I joined the council, I've been actively involved in trying to address the problem at Huntington because I know what it is to live at Huntington and the conditions. So the problems at Huntington didn't just start a couple months ago. It's been for decades. And that's one of the reasons why I voted to support the current owner of Huntington because it's a nonprofit entity to ensure that rents were kept low. And when they started the path at which they started not improving upon the quality of the properties and all of that, I, along with my council members, we voted and supported that we hold Aon accountable. I met with some of the residents at Huntington. I advanced to the council and staff that we need to help them with some rent assistance. I brought the idea forward to help Huntington, and we'll continue to do that. And just not Huntington, but other apartment complexes too as well that are having problems. Thank you.
All right, that concludes with the questions section of the forum. I want to thank everyone who's involved today. Ayada Leeds for partnering and Antoinette for doing such a fantastic job as a moderator. Lana for helping keep everyone on track with time. Tatiana for collecting questions. All the attendees, all the candidates, and everyone here today. Thank you. We're now going to do a part where you have a chance to sit down with the candidates. We have 4 tables set up in the back. There's 3 in the front we're going to organize shortly, and we'll try to do our best in the slightly crowded room to make sure that we can set everyone up with a table. So if you want to talk to candidates, ask them questions, and get to know them a little bit better in a more personal way, feel free to do that. And again, thank you all for being here and to all the candidates and all the attendees.
Good job. Thanks for coming. How you do? Right? Good job.